I still remember the exact sound her heels made as she left our apartment that morning, sharp, confident, echoing too loudly in my chest. "It's just lunch," she had said, tilting her head like I was a child not smart enough to understand grown-up things. "We dated in college, Mark. It's ancient history." That was the third time she'd gone to meet him. The third time she'd made me feel like I was asking too much just by caring. I didn't argue that morning. I simply nodded, kissed her cheek like a man who didn't already know he was being slowly erased. And then I watched her walk out the door in a beige silk blouse I hadn't seen before, something expensive, new, and definitely not worn for me. But the betrayal didn't hit like an explosion. It landed like dust, slow, silent, collecting over time until I couldn't breathe. Her name was Camila. Beautiful, bright, a finance executive who carried herself like the room owed her something. She came from old money. Connecticut prep schools, Manhattan summers, white wine with hard consonants. Me? I was a mechanical engineer who'd worked my way out of a dusty little Indiana town, one trade school course at a time. I didn't inherit charm, I built things to escape needing it. When we met, she loved my simplicity. She said I was refreshingly unpolished. I see now that meant I was safe, malleable. The perfect contrast to her chaotic world. For the first few months, I thought I'd won some kind of cosmic lottery. Camila chose me, a man who still Venmo'd rent in halves, who fixed his own microwave instead of buying a new one. She made me feel like I was enough. Until I wasn't. I began to notice the difference when we went to parties thrown by her colleagues. Everyone wore whispers of wealth, Rolex faces tucked under French cuffs, jokes about private equity I didn't understand. And she'd laugh, saying I was her grounding wire. Sometimes she'd pat my chest like I was a service dog. At first, I played along. Then it started to sting. But I never said a word. Because love, I thought, was about compromise. She compromised her pedigree for my heart, I compromised my pride for her world. That morning, the morning she went to see him again, was the day I realized love without dignity is just servitude in disguise. She left around 10:30. By 10:45, I was still staring at the coffee ring her mug left on the counter. That's when my phone rang. My mother. I almost let it go to voicemail. She'd called me 3 times this week already. But something inside me, a reflex, maybe, made me swipe. "Mark," she said. "I know you keep saying no, but I just want to ask one last time. There's a girl. Family friend. Educated. Humble. Not flashy. They asked about you again." My mother always knew when to call. Like she had a direct line to my unraveling. Normally, I would have made some excuse, said Camila and I were doing fine, that I didn't believe in arranged marriages. But that morning, I didn't say any of that. Instead, I heard myself say, "What's her name?" That was the first move. Not out of spite. Not yet. Not revenge. Not exactly. Just a man choosing to finally stop waiting. But if I had known what that one yes would trigger, how it would unravel both Camila's world and mine, I might have paused. Then again, maybe not. Because sometimes, the best revenge doesn't come with fire and fury. It starts with walking away while they think you're still watching the door. I've always believed in the kind of love that makes you quieter, calmer, not louder or desperate. Maybe it's a middle-class thing, you know. You grow up learning to be grateful, not greedy. My parents drilled it into me, work hard, stay humble, don't reach beyond your station. I listened. I followed the rules. I studied hard, got my MBA through scholarships and night shifts, and landed a decent job in corporate procurement. Not flashy, not 6 figures, but stable. Predictable. I built my life like a spreadsheet. Balanced, cautious, every cell accounted for. That's probably why Ava looked like sunlight crashing through my closed blinds. She walked into my life during a vendor summit in Chicago. She wasn't even supposed to be in my breakout group, but she'd been assigned to observe our presentation. I remember stumbling over my opening remarks when I saw her, tailored cream blazer, sharp eyes, like someone who had never waited for a discount code in her life. She was the VP of strategy at her father's firm, a private equity giant that had probably eaten companies like ours for breakfast. She smiled at me like she already knew I was hers. Ava was loud where I was measured. Lavish where I was lean. But she wasn't unkind. That's what pulled me in. She could have laughed at my discount shoes or mocked my Corolla that squealed in reverse. Instead, she'd stroke the dashboard with faux reverence and say, reliable. Sexy. I told myself she saw something in me other than what I owned, or didn't. And I needed to believe that. Needed to believe that for once, maybe love wasn't a game only the rich got to win. But the truth is, I always felt like a guest in her world. Like I was playing boyfriend in someone else's life. She lived in a high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows and a doorman who always looked like he was trying not to smirk at me. Her fridge had wine I couldn't pronounce and cheeses wrapped like small designer gifts. And yet, she'd curl up beside me on her minimalist couch and ask me about my day like it mattered more than the market. I think that's what made it so easy to fall for her. She made me feel like I belonged. Even when I didn't. At first, I kept things from my parents. Not because I was ashamed of Ava, but because I didn't know how to explain to her. My family believes in matching backgrounds, people who understand where you come from. My mom had already lined up a few girls from our community, accountants, teachers, a quiet pharmacist named Julia whose only vice was mint chocolate. She'd sent me pictures. Set up accidental meetings. I kept brushing them off. Maybe next year, I'd say. But the truth was, I was stalling. I thought Ava might be it. And Ava. Ava knew about the arranged proposals. She teased me about it at first. Said I was her secret scandal, the forbidden boy next door. But over time, her jokes got sharper. Whenever we disagreed, she'd roll her eyes and say, "This isn't one of your family's marriage interviews, you know. I don't owe you anything." It was a dagger cloaked in silk. I laughed it off, until it started feeling like a warning. Looking back, the power imbalance was always there. It crept in like smoke under a locked door. Subtle. Toxic. She picked the restaurants. She planned our vacations. When I offered to split bills, she called it cute. When I insisted, she got a cold. "Why do you always make money?" she'd snap. And I'd apologize, even though it was her money, not mine, that had its fingerprints on everything we did. Still, I convinced myself this was love. That I wasn't being erased. That just because I didn't own the world didn't mean I didn't belong in hers. But slowly, I noticed the cracks. She stopped introducing me to her friends at work functions. She stopped holding my hand in front of her father. When we argued, she'd default to silence, like I wasn't worth the oxygen. And when I brought up the future, she gave me timelines like corporate roadmaps. "Let's revisit this in 6 months, she once said, like our love was a quarterly review. And yet, I stayed. Like a fool, I stayed. I think I was afraid of being ordinary again. Of going back to a world where I was just another name on a marriage list. Where I was praised for being stable, not loved for being me. Ava made me feel exceptional, even if that feeling was rented, not real. Then came the day she said she wanted space. She had to clear her head. That she'd be traveling for work, Chicago again, of all places. But I saw the message on her lock screen. A name I recognized. Daniel. Her ex. The one she always said was too intense. Too possessive. Too not right for her. The one she'd blocked, until she hadn't. She hadn't noticed I'd seen it. She kissed me on the cheek and left with her designer bag and a lie tucked beneath her perfect lips. That was the day I called my mother and said, "Tell them yes. I'll meet the girl you picked." Not because I wanted to, but because I was done being a placeholder. That was the day something cold and precise settled in my chest. The day I stopped chasing Ava's light, and began preparing to cast my own shadow. I remember the exact moment it broke. Not just the relationship, but something far more intimate. My sense of reality. My trust in her voice. The illusion that love, when mixed with power, still plays fair. It was a Thursday evening, one of those slow-burning summer days when time feels sticky and the air clings to your skin. Madison had just gotten off a conference call with some investors from London. She barely acknowledged me as she tossed her phone onto the marble island, muttering, "I need some air. I'm going to meet Jordan for coffee." Jordan. Her ex. I didn't say anything right away. I couldn't. The words just ricocheted in my skull, not yet forming thoughts, just echoes. When she noticed my silence, she finally looked up, her face unreadable. Not apologetic. Not ashamed. Just, composed. I forced my voice steady. "You're meeting Jordan again?" She blinked slowly, as if I were being childish. "We've talked about this, Neil. He's part of my life. We shared 6 years, he's not some random person." "And I'm what?" I asked, keeping my tone low. "A placeholder? A project you took on for balance?" She sighed and rolled her eyes, the way rich people do when confronted by what they think is emotional poverty. "Don't be dramatic. I'm telling you where I'm going. I didn't lie. Isn't that what trust is?" Her condescension chafed harder than the betrayal itself. It was the tone that said she held the cards, the money, the charm. That if I wanted to stay in her orbit, I had to behave. I didn't stop her. I didn't beg. I just watched the woman I loved, who used to send me poetry at 2 a.m., who used to light up when I walked into the room, tie her silk scarf like she was dressing for war. Not a romantic reunion, not an innocent catch-up. A war she knew I couldn't win. After she left, I sat on the couch, scrolling aimlessly through old texts from her. "You ground me, Neil. You make me feel real again. Jordan never listened the way you do." All the things she said when she needed something soft, something humble, something loyal. And now that she was back on top. Investors, connections, fame in niche tech circles, I was a worn-out crutch. I knew what this meant. This wasn't just coffee. This was her testing the waters. Seeing if the version of her that existed with him still fit. If the comfort of shared privilege could spark again. Because I, low-salary consultant, student loan warrior, second-hand suit, was a reminder of a season she no longer wanted to romanticize. The worst part? It wasn't the betrayal of her body, it was the betrayal of her words. She said I was her future. But her future didn't come with late rent notices or awkward family dinners or a partner who still bought groceries in bulk to save. 2 days later, I found out she'd stayed out until 2 a.m. My friend Caleb saw her with Jordan at the rooftop bar of the Nash, a place I'd never been invited to with her. She once said it was too snobby, but apparently not snobby enough for ex-lovers with mutual portfolios. When I confronted her, she didn't even lie. "Yes, we had a few drinks. He's going through a rough patch. And you're his therapist now." She didn't flinch. "He still matters to me. I won't apologize for being there for someone I loved deeply. But you'll be casual about torching what we have?" "What do we have, Neil?" she snapped. "You think we're equals? You think we're growing in the same direction? You're sweet, but we both know we're from different planets. You still count your Starbucks points. I closed deals worth 6 figures before brunch." She said it like it was just a fact. Like it wasn't cruel, just a necessary correction of a shared delusion. I don't know if I felt more insulted or ashamed. Ashamed that some part of me knew she was right. That night, I stared at the ceiling until dawn. I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I just went numb. Not because of her, because of me. Because I'd allowed myself to believe I could bridge class with kindness. That love could equalize anything. The next morning, my mother called. We've been talking with the Maras. Their daughter, Priya, is coming home from Boston next month. She's grounded. Kind. I think you two would make sense. Can I tell them you're open to the idea? I didn't even hesitate. Yes, I said. Tell them I'll meet her. I wasn't sure if I was saying yes out of rebellion, desperation, or sheer exhaustion, but it felt clean. Like something closing. A valve shutting off. When Madison came home that evening, she was quiet. No makeup. Her eyes didn't sparkle like usual. She poured herself some wine and asked, without looking at me, "Are you mad?" I stood there, hands in my pockets, watching the woman I once saw my future in. "No," I said flatly. "I'm just done expecting you to pick me." She turned, confused. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm done being the man you use to remember you're human. You want power, you want Jordan, you want someone who won't make you feel small when you're insecure. That's not me." She didn't argue. That was the nail in it. She knew I was right. I walked out of the apartment that night. The lease was in her name. Everything inside was hers. But the clarity in my chest, that was mine. And so was what came next. I had no intention of fading away quietly. She may have had money, but I had something far more dangerous now. Purpose. I didn't cry when she left. I didn't scream or beg her to stay. I just sat there, staring at the door as it clicked shut behind her, the silence afterward pressing against my skull like a vice. Her perfume still lingered in the apartment, sweet and smug, like it knew something I didn't. She said it so casually. "It's just coffee, Marcus. We're adults. Adults don't meet their exes behind their partner's back. Adults don't lie and act like they're doing you a favor by admitting it. Adults don't walk out in the middle of your Sunday plans with a smirk and a goddamn promise to text you later." I waited until I heard the elevator descend. Then I exhaled, slowly. That was the last time I let her control the tempo. I spent the first 48 hours not reacting. Just breathing. Observing. Letting my mind catalog every insult disguised as a joke, every dismissive glance she gave when I talked about work, every time she paid the bill and reminded me with her eyes. Every time her parents invited her to fundraisers and accidentally forgot to include me. She had all the power. Financially. Socially. Emotionally. And the worst part? She knew it. She enjoyed it. But I had one thing she never did, humility born from survival. The kind that teaches you how to wait. Watch. Study. My father used to say, rich folks think consequences are poor people's problems. Show them they're not. The same night she went to meet her ex, I accepted my mother's proposal. No hesitation. Just a quiet yes. She blinked through the phone, stunned. "Are you sure, Beta?" I was. And I wasn't doing it for her. Not entirely. The girl my mother had been quietly introducing me to, Priya, was a Stanford-educated behavioral analyst. She was graceful, confident, and completely unfamiliar with this war I was beginning to fight. But that was okay. She didn't need to be my weapon. She just had to be my mirror, reflecting a version of myself I'd let die under Claire's shadow. I met Priya the next evening for tea. She smiled easily. Her eyes were calm. Observant. She listened when I spoke. Not because she was waiting to respond, but because she was curious. By the end of our hour together, I knew, this wasn't going to be a fake engagement. This was going to be real. And that made it more dangerous. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about destroying Claire. It was about removing her ability to define me. And then letting her watch someone else admire what she threw away. But I wouldn't parade Priya around. That would be too obvious. Too performative. Claire was sharp. Manipulative. She'd smell intention like blood in water. No, this had to be subtle. Surgical. First, I needed to disappear. I wiped my social media clean. Every post, every tag. Gone. Then I changed my number. Told mutual friends I was taking a break. No explanations. Just distance. Claire would notice, and she'd reach out, but silence would be my reply. Then I went to work. Literally. For years, I had played it safe in my career, nonprofit project management. Respectable, but invisible. Claire had always mocked my noble poverty. Now I leaned into it. I reached out to an old contact at a tech startup whose social impact wing was struggling. They needed someone who understood community impact and could write grant applications like gospel. I gave them a plan. They gave me a title, Director of Social Innovation. A pay bump. Autonomy. 2 weeks later, I had a new wardrobe. New job. New life. No Claire. What she didn't know, what made it poetic, was that her ex, the one she met that Sunday, was one of our tech firm's investors. I discovered it accidentally during onboarding. His name flashed across a presentation slide like a flare in the night, Chase Whitmore, Series A angel investor. I felt the pieces click. Claire had left me to rekindle something with the man who now partially funded my career rebirth. The irony was so clean, it tasted surgical. My next step wasn't aggression, it was exposure. I sent Claire one thing, a picture. Me and Priya at my company's onboarding mixer. Laughing. My hand rested lightly on her waist. My name on the event badge. A title she'd never seen before. The photo was posted by someone else. No caption. No comment. Just public enough for Claire's circle to see. She didn't reply, but I know she saw it. Because the next day, I got a message from a mutual friend. Dude. Claire's spiraling. What happened? I smiled. Nothing had happened. Not yet. The final stage of the plan was psychological. I knew Claire. Knew how she moved through life like she was the main character in a high-budget drama. She didn't fear being dumped. She feared being irrelevant. Replaced. So, I let her wonder if she'd been replaced, by someone smarter, warmer, stronger. And unlike her, someone my family actually adored. I didn't post about the engagement. I didn't send an announcement. But I knew she'd hear. She always did. I started getting messages. Not from Claire directly, but from her proxies. Friends. Former colleagues. Heard you're doing great. Wow, your new fiancé looks amazing. Crazy how fast life changes, huh? They weren't congratulations. They were reconnaissance missions. Sent to measure the scale of her loss. And I gave them nothing. No reaction. No closure. Let her stew in the silence she once weaponized. Let her realize she wasn't just abandoned. She was outgrown. I didn't burn her life to the ground. That would have been satisfying in the short term. But I wanted something deeper. I wanted her to feel what I felt the moment she left. Irrelevant. Replaceable. Forgotten. And the best part? I didn't need to destroy her. I just had to become someone she could never reach again. That was my revenge. And it was only the beginning. I didn't have to make a grand announcement. My silence was sharper than any confrontation. I let her go, literally. That day when Ava walked out of my apartment in her ivory trench coat, all made up to meet him again, she kissed me like I was a bookmark, something to hold her place. Said she'd be back in a few hours, and to not overthink it. She smiled like betrayal was casual. Like my love was unworthy of urgency. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I nodded, and while she thought she was walking away with power, I made the most emotionally strategic phone call of my life. "Amy," I said, calmly, "let's move forward with the proposal. I'm ready to meet her." My mother cried. I didn't. The plan wasn't just to marry out of spite. That would have made Ava a permanent tenant in my soul. No. I needed her to see me choose someone else. Publicly. Proudly. With a woman who was everything Ava wasn't, humble, emotionally grounded, and incapable of manipulation. I didn't need to climb some social ladder, I just needed Ava to know she was never the last chapter. Over the next few weeks, I transformed, not externally, but emotionally. I accepted the proposal. Alina, my fiancée, wasn't flashy. She was from a traditional but educated family, a quiet software engineer who wore confidence like perfume, unobtrusive but present. She didn't fawn over wealth or use affection as leverage. When we spoke, she listened. When she smiled, it wasn't transactional. And here's where it got delicious, Ava didn't know I had moved on. Not until the wedding invitations went out. I had carefully arranged everything through mutual friends. Ava still followed my cousin Mia on Instagram, silent stalking, I suspected. So I gave Mia the green light. She posted the engagement photo I staged. Alina and I, standing in front of my parents' modest suburban house, holding hands, surrounded by marigolds. I wore a tailored charcoal kurta, Alina in a deep red sari, her eyes soft, her body language respectful but close. The caption was simple. 2 families. 1 beautiful future. Zayn and Alina, December 16th ring. Less than 30 minutes later, Ava texted me. "Ava, you're engaged." "Ava, you didn't even tell me." "Ava, I thought you said we'd figure things out." "Ava, can we talk?" I didn't reply. But that wasn't the real revenge. That was only the foreplay. You see, Ava had a weapon she wielded without ever calling it one, her influence. Her father was a partner at a corporate law firm in Manhattan. Her world was built on connections and curated privilege. She believed my middle-class existence needed her to sparkle. So I weaponized her assumption. A few weeks before the wedding, I attended a charity networking gala that Ava's father's firm helped sponsor. It was open invite to past community members, and I came as a representative of the local startup I worked for, a fintech app that was finally getting investor traction. When I walked in, I didn't dress for revenge. I dressed for evolution. No dramatic makeover, just confidence in tailored navy, posture straight, every inch of me saying, "I don't need to belong to you anymore." Ava saw me near the silent auction table. Her face, I swear, went from champagne glow to ghost white. She was alone. No ex. No smug superiority. She approached slowly. I let her. "Zayn," she breathed, like it hurt. "Can we talk?" I turned slightly, only just enough to meet her gaze. "We're at a public event, Ava. Are you sure that's a good idea?" "I didn't know you were serious about it," she whispered. "The arranged marriage thing. I thought you'd fight for us." "Why?" I asked, low and even. "You didn't." Her eyes flashed. "You think this is revenge?" "No," I said. "This is recovery." The final blow came days before the wedding, quiet and surgical. Ava had never told her father the full truth about why we broke up. She'd spun it as, we weren't aligned, and he couldn't handle the pressure of dating someone from my world. But during the gala, I'd had a quiet drink with one of the senior partners at the firm, someone who liked my pitch about finance access for underserved communities. That conversation turned into an opportunity. 2 weeks after the wedding, I signed an angel investment agreement through a contact at that very same firm. Not Ava's father, but someone close enough for word to travel. That deal became a stepping stone. Ava didn't just lose me. She lost the narrative that I was beneath her. She lost the power to say she was my upgrade. And then, as if fate were feeling dramatic, I ran into her again, this time at a bookstore. I was with Alina. We were browsing wedding albums. Alina held my hand with both of hers. We were laughing, quiet, real laughter. Ava stood by the memoir section, alone again. No ex. No fiancé. No curated glow. She didn't speak this time. Just stared, hollow-eyed, then turned and walked out. That was the true revenge, not rage, not scandal, not some big cinematic payback. It was me, rebuilt. Whole. Unapologetically small town. Proudly self-made. Loved by someone who didn't need me to be shinier to be seen. Some nights, I think about the moment Ava said, "Don't overthink it." She meant it casually. But she underestimated me. I overthought everything. And that's why I won. It's strange what silence feels like when it's not forced on you, when you choose it, deliberately. The kind that fills a home where love used to echo. Where the scent of someone's shampoo lingers on the pillow long after their promises have evaporated. I didn't respond to her last message. It was a picture of the lake we once visited, followed by, "Thinking of you. I wish things were different." No. She doesn't wish they were different. She wishes I were the same man who tolerated being second. She wishes I still folded under her whims, her wealth, her careful manipulations disguised as affection. But I'm not him anymore. The day I said yes to the arranged marriage proposal wasn't out of spite. It was the first time I chose myself, not her, not the illusion of love I clung to like a drowning man. My parents didn't gloat. They looked at me as if I had returned from a war they never fully understood. And maybe I had. Her name is Alina, the woman my family introduced me to. She doesn't come from wealth or carry herself like she's owed the world. She's a school counselor, soft-spoken but unflinchingly direct. On our first coffee meeting, she said, "You look like someone who forgot what peace feels like." I didn't reply. I just smiled. Because she was right. I didn't fall for Alina the way I did for Aaron, my ex. There were no fireworks, no reckless urgency. Just warmth. And clarity. And the unshakable sense that this woman wouldn't see me as someone to mold or test or compete with. She saw me. Aaron found out through mutual friends. That I was engaged. That I was happy. She texted me, "I didn't think you'd actually go through with it. I thought you loved me." I stared at the message for a long time before I typed, "I did. Until you left for him." Again. She never replied. And honestly, that's how I wanted it to end. Not with a screaming match or some dramatic confrontation. But with a slow, decisive fade. Like a shadow receding when you finally step into the sun. There are moments I still catch myself replaying it all, the lies, the way she'd say, "It's just lunch," and pretend I was being insecure. The night she came home smelling like his cologne. The look on her face when I asked if she wanted to be with him, and how she hesitated before saying no. That pause was louder than any answer. Now, when I wake up, I don't brace myself for disappointment. I don't feel the need to prove I'm good enough. I just breathe. Alina and I don't talk much about our past relationships. But one night, I told her everything. From the betrayal to the revenge to the moment I realized I'd become someone I could finally respect. She didn't judge me. She just said, sometimes healing starts with justice. You earned that. I don't know if what I did qualifies as justice. Maybe it was survival. Maybe it was the quiet rage of a man who'd been overlooked one time too many. All I know is, I didn't burn bridges, I walked away from them while they were still intact. That was the real revenge. Choosing peace. Choosing dignity. Choosing a future that wasn't about proving anything to anyone, especially not her. Erin will live her life always wondering if I still think about her. I do. But not with longing. I think about her the way you think about a storm after it passes, grateful it's over, and that somehow, your house is still standing.